Have you ever looked around and wondered why so many people are wondering and nosy and curious about the lives of others so much? It's like they don't even know what it's like to focus on their own life. They're so concerned with their image, or they're so concerned with how they might look to another person. And I've never really understood that my entire life. There were points where I would participate in gossip in the past because I just wanted to feel like I was a part of something. And that's not how I roll anymore. It's not what I recommend doing at all either. And that was like back in junior high and high school is when I did that kind of stuff. And even in college, when I was going through certain things or going through certain situations, I would never try to intentionally gather so many different kinds of people to operate in my life because I knew from previous experience that whenever I seemed to talk about what I wanted to do or what how I wanted to do it, for some reason it like never panned out. It was just like the universe at the time. I wasn't following Jesus at this time, but at the time I was like, man, the universe just does not want me to see this through for some reason, and I don't understand why. I don't get why this is. But a lot of the times you don't really know, but most people, like I would say at least 70%, maybe, I don't know. Like sometimes I think it's more, sometimes I think it's less, but according to the Bible, two-thirds of the people are not going to have eyes to see and ears to hear, whereas the other third are going to have eyes to see and ears to hear. So maybe we can just round it off to the biblical standard here. But I would say, generally speaking, then, like two-thirds of the population just wants to eat away at your soul and your light because they don't know how to work hard to generate it on their own. They don't know what it's like to look inside themselves and to actually, like, what they don't even understand what that means, right? Like what does that even mean? You can't really describe what it's like to look inside yourself without like someone on the other end having an understanding of just themselves generally speaking. Like they have to have some kind of understanding and self-awareness, enough so that they'll even know what that means. And here's the thing, a lot of people are very capable of being self-reflective, but it's almost like because they're in a certain state of mind that they don't know how to get out of, like there's just like psychological barriers and obstacles that they just do not want to allow themselves to overcome. That's the reason why they fail. And so in today's video, I'm going to talk about how being around low quality people is going to give you low quality results. Now, if you're new to this channel, my name is Thaddeus, and this is the Regal Change YouTube video. YouTube channel. It is what it is. So, why is this the case? Why is it that when you associate yourself with low quality people, you would get low quality results? Well, in certain ways, these people will block your blessings or they will curse your life without you even knowing what exactly is happening. There were so many people, like I was around so many different kinds of people growing up. Like I moved, when I was in ninth grade, I was at one school. Then I was at 10th grade, I was at a different school. And then in my junior year of high school, I was at three different schools. And then in my senior year of high school, I was finally back to one school. So I moved around quite a bit, and the reason at the time was because my father had several different job opportunities, and at the same time, like there were just like certain boundaries in the in like the city that were not like that were changed or something. And so all I knew was that I had to go to different schools, and I wanted to go to a certain school that was closer as well. And so I ended up going to like five, maybe how many was that? Yeah, five different schools then total between my 4 years in high school. And I was around a lot of different kinds of people. And so I got to see a lot of different kinds of things. And when I was a junior in high school, I lived in Phoenix, Arizona. And the whole culture was so much more different because I was originally from Salt Lake City, Utah area. And so the whole culture was different, the whole vibe was different. People talked differently. People were always asking me if I was Mormon because I'm not Mormon, and I wasn't at the time either. But it was super funny. They were like, "What are the Mormons like? What are the Mormons about? Like, are they really as nice as they say? Are they really as cult like as they say?" Like people just wanted to know about like the Mormon culture altogether. It was pretty funny, but at the same time, seeing all these different kinds of people, I started to notice, like, because everybody has their clique, especially in high school, right? In high school, everybody has their clique. But I started to notice how certain people would gather around certain people. All of the people that were doing fairly well in school, they all kind of had the same kind of friend group. And all the people that weren't doing really well or really didn't care, they all kind of had the same friend group. And even at these different places, I began to notice that there was a certain kind of spirit to these people. And I didn't know what to call it at the time, but in retrospect, I realized, okay, that's a spirit. And so I immediately was, I don't know, just by happenstance, I was around all of these different kinds of people, specifically in Phoenix, and most of them were women. And I just liked the company of women at the time. I thought males and females could be friends at the time. What a silly idea that was. But I had a lot of female quote unquote friends at this time when I was a junior in high school, and they were all very smart. Like they were very, very intelligent individuals, but they also had a lot of drama with them. Like they had a lot of drama. And I remember thinking to myself at lunch one day, because they invited me to come sit over with them at lunch. And I remember just hearing their conversation. And I was just like, how can people that are so smart talk about such stupid things? Like that was my, that was my thought process. And it wasn't necessarily that I was calling them stupid, right? Because they were smart. They were smart. They were some of the best people in the class, and yet somehow they just weren't like getting to the deeper parts of life. And I began to notice this trend more and more and more over through college, and especially in the workplace as well. In the workplace, I could tell who is going to be like my biggest competition and who's not going to be my biggest competition. And because look, you're in a career, like you are competing in the world. Like in order to make it somewhere, you have to compete. And this is what a lot of people don't want to hear, specifically men that are like trying to make something of themselves, but they don't actually want to make something of themselves. And believe me, I understand that. I was not the kind of person that had ambition for a period of time in my life. I had like zero drive for probably like 2 or 3 years straight. In it, in college, I was working full time, and I was going to school full time. And even though I was doing those things and I was accomplishing, I just didn't want to do it. Like I just didn't want to. It was like I used these things as a means of keeping myself in line. I didn't know how to keep myself in line. And the reason that is because I was never around people, or at least hardly ever around people, I ought to say. I was hardly ever around people that knew how to keep themselves in line and knew how to keep themselves disciplined. And so I never really understood what it was like to have self discipline, like at all. Because I would hear these things and I would hear certain things. Like I would have people like in my health classes for college, like the classes that we had to take, like there was a 250-pound man that was like 5'8" or 5'9", just a little bit taller than me. And he's teaching health to college students, like these are people that are supposed to be, this is supposed to be like the climax, the creme de la creme, the creme de la creme, maybe that's the term. Anyway, the creme de la creme of education and setting an example. And we have this fat guy, no disrespect to the guy, but that he is what he is. And we have this fat guy teaching us about how to be healthy. That like didn't make sense to me. I was like, I'm paying so much money to hear a fat guy tell me how to not eat cake when I can clearly see that he does not set that example. And but people all around me, like, they didn't seem to care. They didn't seem to care that that was something that was happening. And so, yeah, he knew a lot about health and he knew a lot about these things, but he didn't act on it. And it was so strange. It was so strange. And then you'd have these other professors in college where you actually had some pretty good ones. Like there was a few good ones that I could remember, like two specifically. But that's like it. Out of all of my possibilities of classes, I had like two professors. Okay? Two professors that were able to teach me things with a profundity, a sense of real wisdom and understanding and comprehension of the subject with competence. And that was completely unheard of for most of my classes. And so it just goes to show how little people actually practice what they preach. And so when I hear on my YouTube comments or like my emails or something like that about all of these things that are going on with my videos, and they have these critiques, but the critiques are not necessarily of my ideas or the things that I'm talking about. It's critiques of my character, of which they do not know. You do not know what I've been through. You do not know what I've seen. How could you possibly judge me so much? Like, these are the kinds of people that you're going to have to deal with the more that you level up. And you just got to let it roll off like water on a duck's back. Because these are the kinds of people that don't really know what they're talking about. And you just got to ignore it. In fact, that's what I do for most of the people around my community now. I just ignore you. And these are the things that people do. Like this is so irritating. I guess it doesn't like irritate me as much anymore because I expect in some sense there to be a sense of disloyalty, because I've seen it time and time and time again where people show loyalty, and then after a year or two of showing you loyalty, all of a sudden they start to backtrack because they see you growing and they see you improving, and then they realize, wow, shit, I'm not as impressive as I thought I was. Well, I'm going to hate on him, and I'm going to go against everything he's got going now or she's got going now. And that's what people are like. It's insane. But that's just what happens. And so these people are literally going to, these low quality people can try to act like they're high quality people. But they're not. They're just not. And you have to be able to discern the kind of person they are internally, because outside, appearance does matter. Appearance really does matter. That's one of the reasons why, like, you have to dress a certain way, you have to act a certain way, you have to speak a certain way. If I were to just say and speak like a valley girl, this whole video, you probably wouldn't take me too seriously. You probably wouldn't take me to be someone that would be worth listening to. But if I have a cadence of spiritual authority, of understanding, of empathy, of professionalism, of intellectualism, of philosophical ideas, of open-mindedness, of industriousness, that's going to be hopefully going to come across that way to the audience. And sometimes when the audience sees that, they want to make a judgment. And not everybody. Like, fortunately, I have, in my opinion, like some of the best commenters and people in my emails and such that reach out to me. It's amazing. And the donations that people do, like I've had people say, like, just your videos alone gave me some kind of form of light. That's amazing. That's really cool. I'm glad that I can provide that kind of value to somebody. But that's not really me doing it, though. That's the Most High working through me. I'm just a vessel for God. The praise goes to God. I'm not someone that is supposed to be like, I'm just a guy that doesn't like to give up. That's something I responded to in a comment recently. I'm just a guy that wants to empower people to prosper because I know what it's like to constantly be put down your whole fucking life, all because you have ambition, all because you have dreams. And then you hear the negativity so much that you decide to give up on those dreams. For 2 or 3 years, that's what I did. I gave up on my dreams. I just completely gave up. I threw everything across the table and I just gave up. I was like, you know what? It's not worth it. It's not worth it. I don't get any respect for what I do, so why should I even try? And that was the wrong mentality to have. What I realize now is that ought to motivate me to go harder, to be stronger, to do everything that I can to improve my life so that I can become that respectful person. When I think to myself, I am integrity, I am respect, you have to operate that way, but you don't just, it just doesn't happen overnight. You have to continually work at it for years. And that's what I've done for 5 years now. Since my spiritual awakening 5 years ago, I've had so many ups and downs in between those 5 years, but I've lived more in these 5 years than I ever did in my previous 22 years. And that's insane to say out loud because I always just think about how much you can really do with your life if you just pay attention, if you just give a shit, if you just want to do what you want to do and go after it, but not in a way that you just expect things to happen. You're going to have to make sacrifices. When I first started my YouTube channel, I did not expect anything. I did not expect anything. I just knew that I was being called by God to start making videos because I had some things to say and I had a camera. That's all. That's it. I just had some things to say. I need to get this stuff off my chest because I feel like this information that I have available could probably help somebody. And that's exactly what I did. I just started. I didn't really think much of it. I just continued. I just went with it. I didn't know what was going to happen. And here we are, over a year later, and the results speak for themselves. This is something else I think most people just do not understand. Most low-quality people do not understand. And what high-quality people do understand. Whenever you are making something with your life, whenever you are working on something, don't even give a shit about how other people are going to receive it until it's completed, right? You want to make sure that everything that you're doing, like I have a project that I'm working on behind the scenes, and I have been working on a project behind the scenes. I haven't told anybody about it. It is locked away, throw away the key. It is shut. That is a secret only that, like me, I know about. And the reason that it's only me that I know about is because I want to make sure that before it's completed, like, sure, I'm going to be able to, like, talk about it in a vague term like this, but nobody knows the details but me. And it's just between me and God. And that is so cool to me. That is so amazing. And I don't know what it's going to be like when I release this project. I don't know what it's going to be like. Do I think it's going to be helpful? I hope so. Do I think it's going to be absolutely necessary for me to do the right thing with this project at that time, at this time? I don't know. But that's what it feels right to do. And that's exactly where you need to be in your life. Do what feels right, but also be practical. You're not always going to be able to follow your passion. This is something that I've learned within the last few years. This is just part of being a man specifically, but I think being an adult as well. Because most women think that, like, marriage is going to be this picket white fence kind of a thing. And there is that possibility where it could be, but it's also going to be a lot of work. Raising children is not going to be a walk in the park. I remember hearing so many different kinds of stories about me and my siblings growing up, about how different we were with sleep. I'm pretty sure that my brother, my younger brother, I'm the oldest out of the siblings that I have. I'm pretty sure my younger brother was always up at night. And they called him, I don't know if I want to say this actually, but he would run his head into everything. He would just try to run his head through things. And he would always try to break stuff. But he was always fun about it. He was never doing it out of, like, intentionally trying to harm. He just was, like, having a good time. Whereas my sister, on the other hand, my younger sister, she was fairly mellow. It wasn't necessarily that she was, like, easy to raise, but she was different. Like, she was a girl. And my parents had me and my brother and then the girl. And so there was a completely different dynamic once my sister entered the picture in the household. There was another girl in there. And so it was kind of strange. But I remember, though, at the same time, which I don't think is the healthiest thing to do, but my mom and my sister were, like, trying to become friends. I don't think that's a healthy parent-child dynamic for them to be friends. That's just something that it's not going to end very well, because you might also raise children that are the opposite gender to be, like, the backup father or the backup mother. And that's what a lot of single moms do to their boys. They raise their children to be the father in the house. And that's not healthy for the child. It's not healthy. And so the child ends up not understanding how to go through things and how to actually improve himself or herself. Whether it's the mom or the dad doing that. I don't see a lot of dads that are single doing that to their daughters or anything like that, but with single moms I've seen it a lot. And this just goes to show that another sign of quality people is the family. Quality people value family. Quality people understand the importance of family. If you do not understand or respect the family dynamic, I genuinely believe your life is going to be a lot less fulfilled. Why? Because I have been through it. I've been through a family, not just my immediate family, but other parts of my family where they said that they valued family, but when it came to the actions, that's where things went awry. And I'm not gonna say here like sit here and say any names or anything like that, but I'm just giving you guys an understanding that sometimes it's even your family that will do these kinds of things to you. And even in the Bible, it does say that your enemies will be in your own household. So this is something to take note of. But altogether, the best way to just be more quality is to cut loose of the people that you know for sure are already low quality. And I don't necessarily like to say high value or high value man or high value woman. I don't really like that. But there was someone that made a comment in a previous video of mine recently that I think was pretty spot on. They said that they almost find it, I don't know if they said impossible, but they almost find it impossible to even be able to have a friend or trust someone that doesn't follow Christ. And the reason for that is because if they haven't given their heart to Christ, it's going to be very difficult for you to actually give something. People, specifically women, but people in general are either takers or givers. If they're taking more than they're giving, sometimes you're going to have that kind of dynamic, like you have to some degree in a relationship. Sometimes you're going to be giving more, sometimes they're going to be giving more, depending on what you're going through. But if it's always like lopsided, if it's like anywhere between like 70-30 or like 60-40, 50-50, 60-40, where 60% of the time you're giving or 40% of the time you're giving and the other person's receiving and giving, that's more along the lines you want to be. But if it gets to be anywhere between like 70% of the time you're giving, bro, just walk. just sister, just walk away. They don't care. They don't. Someone that wants to be in your life is not going to make it super difficult for you to actually be in your life. So with that being said, I hope this message was useful and insightful. And until next time, peace be with you.